Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Monday, June 11th, 2018. I am feeling much better today after getting 7-8 hours of sleep, much of it uninterrupted, which is always a good thing. So I am feeling great today, relatively speaking, especially compared to how I felt over the weekend. So let's talk tropics. The global shot, as I said yesterday, I really like this picture. It's nice. I love the whole full disc shot. Frontal system up here. See the flooding in Philadelphia last night? Tropical moisture interacting with cold fronts always creates problems, and we had that last night in the city of brotherly love. So that shows you always have to be aware of what's happening with the weather, whether it be through radar apps. I use Radar Scope, or social media notifications from people that you follow in your region. That's a good example of that. So now we have this disturbance in the Caribbean that we need to talk about. All of this region is just a big X, nothing to worry about for several weeks to come. We have powerful Hurricane Bud, which is going to be heading up towards the Baja, and then Aletta over here, which is a non-event. So this is the sort of the agenda for today's talk, if you will, laid out in pictorial format. And now we'll move through some of the other things that we talk about. Remember, Mondays are usually the longest video, where I go over the most material for the week ahead, kind of setting the stage for what we're going to talk about over the next 7 days or so. So we look at the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index. I find it most fascinating that both indice values, that's probably not a word, index values, I guess indice is plural, forget it. They're trying to meet in the middle here, and basically you can see that not only graphically, but in the numerical part as well. -3 today, but the 90-day and the 30-day are getting closer together, all trying to get, I guess, towards zero, and eventually probably below zero, and we'll shift the pattern more towards that supports warming of the tropical Pacific or an El Nino, but not yet. It's not happening just yet. If we look at the anomaly chart, which was updated today, a little bit colder than average right here in the extreme eastern Pacific, between the west coast of South America and the Galapagos Islands. Let's change this over to, red. So right in this area here, colder. And then these little splotches of warmer than average. And then everything else seems to be pretty much where it should be. No significant warming. We're not seeing any deep reds over here in the southeastern Pacific. It's just a little bit warmer than normal. But then look at the Atlantic basin. And I'm going to show you what it looked like just a week ago or so. Really starting to fill in this area through here. And it's changing, so that it's not quite as a disparity from normal or the average. Interchanging normal and average sometimes, got to be careful with that, because the climate's always changing, and you're changing your normals and your averages all the time. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So this is what the anomalies are today. Notice the date, June 11th. Then if we go and we change it, this is what it was like. I got to get the scale the same. On the 4th. So let's try that again since I blew it. Here's today. Here it was on the 4th. Notice up here, these are the things we'll point out. This gets chipped away a lot, and this really starts to fill in, not so much with more positive anomalies, but you're losing the negatives. See that? The deep blues are definitely eroding away, and overall the pattern is changing in the Atlantic. The pressure pattern is easing up just a little bit, and we're slowly modifying the main development region so it's not quite as hostile. Now, this is nothing like it was last year. Don't get me wrong, but maybe the normal to above normal season that NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is predicting will be accurate. Instead of these calls, I saw some forecast of a much below normal season, really, 7 to 9 total named storms. I think, we'll see. We'll let the fruit that the tree bears and whatever, tell the story. Some stupid analogy I'm trying to come up with. It's only June. we have a long way to go. But the sea surface temperature pattern is changing in the tropical Atlantic, and we'll see how that evolves. It's also changing in the subsurface of the tropical Pacific. Decent area of warming. Change this back to blue if it'll let me. Come on. There we go. In the eastern Pacific, definitely have some warmer water compared to average rising to the surface. But I'm going to tell you something, just kind of looking at this at the big picture, this is a vast expanse of the eastern Pacific, from roughly 95 west longitude all the way across to beyond 140 east longitude, way across the Pacific. This is a huge cross-section, and this is just not resupplying. So we don't have another one of these large and intense areas of warmth forming over here to make the trek across, so to speak, with another westerly wind burst. So I think the idea of a warm event is going to be weak. And we've seen seasons like '04, the Atlantic was certainly warmer then, where you had a weak warm event set up by September, October, focused more in the central Pacific. It's called the Modoki El Nino, which, again, we could talk about that in and of itself someday, all by itself. But all El Ninos are not the same as the bottom line, and this is certainly not headed towards what we saw in 2015 or 1997, probably not even by next winter. So, again, nothing in the cards suggesting to me any overwhelming signals for the Atlantic or the Pacific. All right, moving on. If you like warm water, the northern Gulf Coast is the place to be. Look at all this. 29, 30 Celsius in the shelf water surrounding Louisiana and the Mississippi Sound, almost over to Gulf Shores, Alabama, and Orange Beach, and then even over to Galveston Bay, Galveston, Texas, down to Surfside Beach, close to there anyway. Water temperatures in the lower 80s Fahrenheit, nice and warm, and I have to look at why is this just sitting here. It won't go away. It won't fill in. Be interesting to see if it does so by later in the summer. I get the idea of this. This is always here every year. This little cold patch just north of the Yucatan. Generally, that southerly flow that comes around the Bermuda High. You think about the big Bermuda High sitting out here, and you get that flow that comes through. And so you're blowing the water away from the land here, and you're getting upwelling. I guess the same could be said over here if the winds are coming across. You're getting some upwelling and mixing on the west side of Florida. But that would tend to pile the water up on the east side, and it would be warmer. So I don't know. I'm not an oceanographer. I look at the effects of hurricanes on top of the earth, the geographic part. Anyhow, in the Atlantic, things are nice and warm here as well. Finally, 26 Celsius all along. Let me move my little, there we go. I need my toolbar slid over. 26 C all along the coast here, in some areas even 27 Celsius Fahrenheit. The 26 Celsius is about 79.5 Fahrenheit, roughly the temperature that hurricanes need to, sustain themselves. 82 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 28 Celsius, seems to be the ideal, and anything above that, you get rapid intensification. There are instances where just 26 C will do the trick, 80 degrees, but anyway, out here along the east coast, from Hatteras, at least, south, up here along the Jersey Shore, Delmarva region, still cold, but south of there, it's very nice. So hit the water, and just be mindful of thunderstorms and of creepy things in the night. I'll show you what I mean by that at the very end. I have a little surprise for you. All right, let's get rid of that and move on to the Hurricane Center's homepage. And lo and behold, would you look at that, down here in the Southwest Caribbean, we do have the yellow X that has been introduced. Low chance of development as a broad area of showers and thunderstorms persisting over the Southwest Caribbean. Several hours it's been around. The activity is associated with a tropical wave over northwestern Venezuela and a surface trough east of Nicaragua. And they are all interacting with a large upper-level trough. Cool thing about that is I can show you this in just a minute. Conditions somewhat favorable maybe once it's in the southwestern Gulf at the end of the week. None of that is really of much concern, except that this will bring a tremendous amount of moisture towards and through this area. Rainfall, not ever, ever, ever to be underestimated and underappreciated as a mechanism for mayhem, death, and destruction. I'm not kidding about that. So this may not develop into the GFS hurricane that we have seen over the last 13 days, but it could bring torrential rain first to Central America, and then maybe up into parts of the Texas coast, eastern Mexico. We'll just have to see. So there it is. We'll have something to monitor as time goes on. Let me get a swig of water. Said I was feeling better. We're about 95%, but I think one little taste of the Fiji water will help. Oh, yeah. Very good. All right. So that's the Atlantic, and we're going to look at that in more detail in a moment. In the Pacific, of course, we do have Bud out here. Very powerful hurricane, Category 3, and probably going to intensify a little bit more from there. And then up here along the Baja, that is where this is headed. It looks like it should weaken before reaching that area. Water temperatures up here cooler than they are in the vicinity of Bud's current location. And I do think I've got a sea surface temperature chart. I can show you that. A lot of moisture is going to spread up through this region. We'll get to that too in just a moment. Not a hurricane threat for Baja, but high surf, rainfall, some windy conditions, certainly the threat of any flooding because of that rainfall spreading up into northwest Mexico up here, and eventually parts of the southwest U.S. Looking at the broader picture, satellite, I really like this one too. Here is our disturbance in the Caribbean Sea, and here's that front draped across the North Atlantic into the northern United States. Here is Bud. So a very active pattern for much of the northern hemisphere and the northwest part of the northern hemisphere, except out here where dry air, stable conditions prevail, which is very much the norm for this time of year. So looking beneath the clouds, so to speak, do we see in the Caribbean any signs of this so-called vorticity? And we have a little bit here in the southwest Caribbean, just a little, elongated, not concentrated like Bud, nice and round. There's Aletta, as weak as it is, it still has a concentrated area of energy or vorticity. So let's keep an eye on this over the coming days when I do my update tomorrow and Wednesday and so forth. And let's see if this takes on a more rounded appearance, and does any of this energy rotate through and try to close off. Those will all be clues as to the eventual fate of this system, all right? So for now, a big rain threat and not much else. Now, you folks in Texas, that being said, you could certainly use some rainfall over here, just not 40 inches. 10 inches would even be too much at this point, right? So maybe we can squeeze out a few inches, spread it out evenly, and everybody will be happy. So check this out. This is the upper level wind chart with the satellite. In fact, you can get different layers here. It's 100 millibars to 250, 250 to 350, etc., all the way down to 500 millibars, depending on which of the barbs you're looking at, these wind barbs. And so here is the upper level trough carved out right there. And then you've got your tropical wave that's come through over here, and then this little surface trough, all interacting with each other to get this blow up of convective activity. And upper level winds just not very favorable overall. But over the next few days, maybe something will change. We'll have to see. We have plenty of time to watch it. There are no indications in much of the reliable global models that a strong system will develop from this. So let's focus on the impacts that seem more reasonable, and that would be heavy rain, some choppy seas, maybe tropical storm conditions at some point, but even that is far down the road, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So let's take a look at this, the GFS from the 12Z run today. I want to focus on, let's outline what's what. Here's California, the Baja Peninsula, Mexico, okay? And over here, I always feel like Bob Ross when I'm doing this. Is that an insult to Bob Ross? It probably is. So there is Bud right there. Aletta, don't worry about that. And then watch up here. This is Arizona, and here is New Mexico. So let's put this into motion. 12Z GFS from today. Watch as Bud moves up towards the Baja, right up here. Coming in pretty solid in the vorticity signature, so shear probably not going to weaken this system as much as just the colder water in the vicinity of the Baja. I think that's going to be the main issue. Now look, at the end of the run, there's the leftover signature into northwest Mexico. And then right here, just on the other side of the border up here is Tucson. So I'm getting concerned about a huge influx of moisture across this area, southeast Arizona and western portions of New Mexico. This could be a major issue. And you also see, just for what it's worth, a large area spread out of vorticity in the Gulf of Mexico. What happened to the hurricane that it was showing? Not there. Now, this could eventually try to generate a weak east-weighted, where it looks like a comma, more or less, system with tropical storm force or gale winds in one quadrant. Typical for June. It's a very June-type system. Not a Category 3 or 4 hurricane. That's very rare in June. They do happen, but they're rare. So at day 5, really not much to worry about in the Gulf over here. Just thought I'd point that out. The bigger concern for me, we got Phoenix and Tucson and Yuma and, Las Cruces, New Mexico. Let's don't forget about our friends in the desert Southwest. When tropical moisture comes in, that can be a big problem. So I'll be focusing on that as well. I want to zoom in on the sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific. Right here is where Bud will end up, and that is the 26 Celsius isotherm right there. Isotherm means line of equal temperature. See, it extends all the way out, way over here, like that. And then there's 27 Celsius, and where it is now, 28, 29, so we're talking about low 80s Fahrenheit, and Bud will track up this way, something like that, and eventually move out of that warmer water pattern. But that 26 sea line does come right up close to the Baja for what it's worth. Gulf of California, pretty chilly, so the center will weaken quickly, losing that latent heat that's in the atmosphere because of the warmer ocean farther to the south where Bud got its start. So not the same pattern as we would see in August or September, where the water temperatures are warmer much farther north and all the way up into the Gulf of California. Nevertheless, you folks in the Southwest, start thinking about all that heavy rain that could be coming to your region, and just make sure you're aware more than anything, because, look at this, the QPF here from the Weather Prediction Center, some pretty high values in extreme southeast Arizona, parts of western New Mexico. This is tempting for me to, this is tropical cyclone interactions with the desert Southwest are very seldom studied. You have a few people like Mike Olbinski, who lives out there. I hope I said his name right. He lives there, so he's got a leg up. And there are others, but I'd like to go out, and we'll see. Maybe I can. We'll just have to see. It's a few days away. I was out there in 2014 for Norbert and Odile, and Norbert, I ended up here in St. George, Utah, of all places, and it was fascinating to see. And I'm serious, not, if it's not a hurricane hitting Florida or Texas or whatever, I don't care. Well, that's fine on your end if you don't care, but the people in the desert Southwest here, I assure you they care. If 200% of climatological normal rainfall is coming, they definitely care. So I want to make sure we do not overlook them. All right, so an active pattern for sure over the next several days, and you can see too, maybe some heavy rainfall coming out of the Gulf. This is related to the frontal systems and tropical air mass collision, so forth and so on in the east. It's going to be a hot week though overall, as a ridge of high pressure sets up shop, and that'll further squash this system too. But anyway, busy week ahead for sure. Now look, I want to show you something from last night. I went down to the beach. I was trying to get some lightning pictures, and I was at the north end of Shell Island Resort at Wrightsville Beach, trying to get some crawlers, where it spreads through the sky. And I took this picture, got home to look at it, and I was like, we're looking through all of them, and I didn't get anything. The storm was dissipating. And I noticed that. I was like, what in the heck? This is the hotel back here, and this is a railing, where you walk out to the beach. So clearly it's just somebody standing there, but you can imagine my surprise when I looked at this, and I was just like, okay, that's not lightning, that's not a crawler, that's a creeper. And yeah, it kind of sent goosebumps up and down my spine or whatever. Chills is what that is. If you get goosebumps on your spine, you got problems. But I think when you see something like that, when you're trying to get lightning, somebody has my sense of humor, let's put it that way. That's something that I would do, and probably did do, when I was a kid. So, just thought I would show you that. No, it's not a ghost. It's just somebody standing there. But I wasn't expecting it, so there's that. Thought I'd throw that in for good humor. All right? All right. It is good to be back, feeling much better. And, hey, tomorrow I'll probably be 100%. So, woohoo. Goodbye, summertime cold. Hello. Sleeping in until I wake up. Because you know what? Eventually there's going to be a hurricane issue somewhere, and my sleep is going to get less and less. So I better get it now while I can. All right. Have a good rest of your Monday. Thanks for tuning in. I did not get any emails this week. Maybe people don't email as much. So there is no Mailbag Monday. Instead, it was Creeper on the Beach Monday. But if you have any questions you ever want me to answer, I know there's a lot in the YouTube comments, but I'm pretty good at answering most of those when they happen. I want email, man. I'm an old-fashioned guy. Send me an email, Hurmark, HURRMARK, @gmail.com. Ask anything, and I can answer it next Monday. And if not, we'll just talk about something else. Maybe somebody suggested bringing back This Week in Hurricane History. We'll see. Anyway, have a good rest of your Monday. I do appreciate you watching. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. We'll chat more tomorrow.